Good morning, everybody. I'm Bree the Plant Lady, checking in with a weekly garden tour. Now, I missed last week and I'm a day late, but that basically just sort of sums up my life right now. I think I really struggle with seasonal change, and I'm also kind of overwhelmed with both live and in person and webinars and garden tours and just general time management. But I'm really excited to show you the garden today. I think that with the cooler nights and the shorter days, despite the fact that we haven't had much rain, everything is really popping. So let's get to it. Let me show you what's going on here in my Zone 7 Central North Carolina foodscape. Well, let's start right here with little Ava Grace and the tropical foundation landscape. And look at that clear Carolina blue sky. We're beautiful weather right now. It's like 70s and 50s. Actually, it's gonna get hotter than that today. When you're in the sun, it's hot. But I love these castor beans. These were self-sown, and I mean, look at how big their trunks are. It's crazy to think these germinated in like May, and they grew all of this through the course of the summer. And really interesting to note, for some reason today, they are like the home to breeding grasshoppers. There they are. We have a lot of grasshoppers here. And I will have castor bean seed available for sale during the fall open garden on Saturday, October 9th from noon to 4 p.m. Free admission, no registration. You can just come and tour the gardens, and it's just a really fun day. And hopefully the weather will be good, but I did rent a tent just in case. Now, the dahlias are finally starting to pick up some pace. This is the dahlia that I bought at Aldi. And this actually is the one I've been most impressed with all summer because it's bloomed. But the ones I grew from seed from Floret Flower, they're finally starting. You see, there's still lots of flower buds to come. But, I mean, it's such a pretty flower. And I really love that color echo with this one and that Alabama sunset coleus behind it. And ooh, I have some tomatoes that are ripe in there. I'm harvesting like 20 pounds of tomatoes a day now. It's really kind of crazy. And these peppers are definitely the healthiest peppers that I have on the property. And these are the Tabasco peppers. So I'm gonna try and make Tabasco sauce. You see, the peppers themselves are still really small, but I'm pretty excited to have real Tabasco peppers for the first time ever. Of course, all the salvias in this bed have done relatively well. Salvia coccinea is always the strongest grower. I love these carrots that have just happened on their own. And not only do I love them, but the swallowtail caterpillars have been eating a lot of the foliage. I don't see any on this plant, but hopefully we'll spot some swallowtails today. I'm waiting and waiting and waiting for this popcorn plant to finally flower, but I had to stake it up. You see there's cattle fence in there because we did get 2 inches of rain last week. It's like the first time it's rained since the tomato tasting in August. And this, of course, flopped over. But you see how the cattle fence doesn't really stand out at all. It's just the perfect stake. So I just can't say enough about using cattle fence in the garden. Here's a sweet little kind of semi-double dahlia there. And then check out these Thailand Giant. I mean, the leaves are just so crazy big. I will say they're really awkward in the landscape. Like, yeah, they're hard to place properly, but I'm gonna have a ton of seed, so I'll be able to offer these next spring. Pretty excited about that. The salvia that didn't really do well is this. I'm not sure what its name was, I'm just saying this to remind myself not to buy this again. So, you know, I bought like half a tray, and that's probably the only one that's still going, and it never really grew. I don't know whether it was treated with growth regulator or what, but I like plants that, you know, get some size. So there's a lot of competition in these beds. And one plant that you might not be familiar with that I love is Orthosiphon. This is also called cat's whiskers. And, you know, it's because these big stamens kind of come out from the flower. I think they're so pretty. There's also a white version, which is what I was hoping I was buying, but it's, for some reason, it's a little bit difficult to find, and it shouldn't be, because this is a great tender perennial. Dies with frost here. And I did have this tomato. This was Mountain Fresh. This one succumbed to disease, even though it was in a pot. But notice what hasn't succumbed. My favorite strawberry of all time, Snowy Belle, with 3 ripe strawberries there just waiting for me to harvest. And then Gin Fizz continues to just be awesome. I've harvested a whole bunch of these yesterday. Just delicious. This is definitely my new favorite slicer. You see, it's covered up with fruit still. Lots and lots still to harvest. Both in that plant, these have been really terrific container grown with this enormous coleus, and they don't get any rain. I think that's really the trick here. Next year, we're hoping to have a high tunnel up in the next door property, and it grows tomatoes in that. The sides rolled up, but the ceiling on, so that rain won't impact any tomatoes. You can see there's some Gin Fizz that are just starting to ripen. I can get in there. And the driveway garden is full and lush. I'm really excited for people to hopefully use the wall as a selfie station. I'm long overdue for doing a rice video. I promise I will get that done this week. It's on my to-do list. I was growing the black madres very specifically, not for eating, but for harvesting to grow next year, in hopes that I would have enough to be able to offer it for sale. I probably don't have enough realistically for that, but I was trying. There you have it. Driveway grown rice. Highly recommend giving it a try. Looking into this shrub border, the Callicarpa americana Welch's Pink is really a standout. It's always one of the very first to color up, and I just love that soft pink berry. And of course behind it is Callicarpa americana alba, the white berried form. And you know, this is a shrub border that mixes both natives and non-natives together. It's kind of a big part of my ethic. I worry more about a plant's function rather than where it was from 300 years ago. If you don't like that, you probably won't like my channel, so you don't need to bother leaving me snooty comments, because it's not going to change my mind. I like all plants. Remember that during Pangea, ginkgos were native, so it's a strange discussion to have. Nowadays, people can be so kind of small-minded about it, and I'm always like, well, what'd you eat? Because you're not eating a native plant's diet. Here's actually a Callicarpa that's native to Mexico, and this has really cool, like, super dark berries. And this is usually one that colors up much later, so I'm sort of surprised to see that it's starting to go purple this early in the season. But this is the shrub border definitely has kind of like a spring moment and a fall moment. And the rest of the year, it's just really low maintenance, and that's the whole point of a shrub border. Now that we're buying the neighboring property, I don't necessarily need this barrier, so I've been coming up with ideas of where I could put, you know, some walkways through and open it up and make it so that it's a little bit easier to manage, because right now it's just a really big dense border, and it would be better if there was an opportunity to be able to walk through it and actually experience it in a slightly different way instead of just from the edges. Now, my favorite plant for autumn is Muhly capillaris. This is pink muley grass. It's practically impossible to take a good picture of, at least in my garden. And the only place that it still exists is right here in my driveway. And this is a plant that's super finicky about drainage. And even though I live on sand, in the winter, the water table's really high and it's died everywhere else that I've planted it. And I planted like, I don't know, 500 of these. That was actually the original motivation, was to have that soft pink all through the wave. That was why I originally planted the wave. And all the pink muley grass died the first winter. So again, just because it's native doesn't mean that it's gonna live in this kind of environment. Muley grass does much better with elevation, which I don't have on this property. This is very, very flat. But speaking of the wave, it's kind of funny. I realized last week when we got back from Minnesota that my initial inclination to say that the Seminole pumpkins that I planted did not germinate was completely accurate. Now, I planted some other squash varieties thinking they were all gonna be like zucchini, and they aren't, but they're awesome. So this is the cushaw squash. That's what all this vegetation is, and it's this. And I've found some conflicting information online about its storage, and I'm actually intending to harvest some in a much younger stage where they're soft and tender so that we can eat them more like zucchini. Zucchini is a huge part of my diet because I'm like allergic to almost everything. It's really annoying to try and go out to eat now because I basically can't order anything but salad. But I'm really pleased. You know, the fact that it's not Seminole is fine because I have a ton of Seminole pumpkins growing out back. Here is the cushaw squash in its kind of juvenile form. You see, it still has the flower attached right here. So that's one that I might harvest today to actually just saute or make ratatouille with. But I'm hoping, you know, that I'll get a decent amount of both large and small. Here's one that's more maturing. According to the internet, they can grow up to 15 pounds. That's really big. I don't necessarily need 100 of these at 15 pounds. And my plan will be the ones that will go into storage, like I'm gonna let that one grow. We'll put them in the spare bedroom. So I have nowhere else to store things like pumpkins and squash through the winter because there is not a root cellar here. Now, another treat is that some of the Lycoris, I did a video planting these. I got these from the North Carolina Botanical Garden back in the spring, and at least some of them have started blooming, and they're just so pretty. I think they've come up because we got some rain. It's been so incredibly dry, but you can see a handful have actually sprung out of the ground and opened. So that's good. Over the years, I have planted probably 1,000 of these, and I'm generally underwhelmed by how many flower each year, but I'm glad to see a few. Not much going on the north side other than mosquitoes. I can now definitively say, after having been in Minnesota last week, that there are more mosquitoes on my property than anywhere that I visited in the state of Minnesota. And no, I am not bragging because that reality is actually totally terrible. But if you come for the open house on Saturday, October 9th, be prepared to put on bug spray because I just have an incredible mosquito population. But these borders are looking so nice. The phlox, as much as I've cursed this over the years for being such a vigorous spreader, you really can't beat it for long season bloom, for pollinator activity. It's just a terrific plant. And I'm now at the stage where I wished I was back in August when I was having my tomato tasting, where I'm harvesting about 20 pounds of tomatoes each day. So part of my time management problem is that I'm spending a lot of time in the kitchen making tomato sauce. I've mostly been freezing it this year, though I have enough now where I could thaw it and can it. That way my freezers don't get so full. But all of these pots that we did in late June are just growing like gangbusters now, and these will continue to produce until we have frost. And walking in this pathway is a really cool experience. These bananas are way overhead and they look so beautiful. This Tithonia, I do wish that it was the straight species, that it was taller, but that's okay. Next year I'm just gonna grow this where this height is appropriate. And you really can't even get into this border. It's planted very densely. But you see all that self-sown arugula. It's delicious. And then, of course, there are Treasure Island sweet potatoes growing in that bed that I'll harvest probably closer to mid-November. Coming around here, the sequoia. This is one that I rooted way back when in 2010. It's really starting to get some size on it. You know, not necessarily planted in the right place since it's right here adjacent to a pathway, but it's okay. It's getting tall enough where I could limb up some of these branches, and I'm actually gonna try and root some of these in my prop house. Probably do this in like late October. I generally like to stick conifers on kind of harder wood, and then they stay in the mist house all winter. I got to spend some time yesterday getting some of these root pouches replanted for the cool season. And you know, there's still lots going on in here. I've got, you know, raspberries that are still putting out delicious fruit, and you know, peppers are really just starting to come into their own here. And you know, still lots of tomatoes coming. I'm really disappointed that my seedlings don't look better. I was hoping to have these available for sale at the open garden. I'm not gonna offer these because you can buy better plants from basically any other garden center. But you know, I'll have them to plant here, and that's precisely what I've been doing. Yesterday I got this side of the greenhouse replanted and organized, and I have a video that will go up tomorrow showcasing that. And this is where I've been concentrating the cool season crops, just because it's one area for me to keep watered and for me to keep BT on. And the BT is the stuff, the powder, the white stuff, Bacillus thuringiensis. You're gonna hear me say those words like 1,000 times this fall. It's really the only way that I can get brassicas to ultimately come to harvest, because the cabbage worms are so vigorous here. And I have a new video that will explain everything that's going on in this bed, so I won't spoil the surprise. But overall, the Salvia leucantha are coming into their season. And you know, this is a corner that I see out my kitchen window, and it just makes me so happy to finally have these Salvia leucanthas getting big. I had them up in that shrub border that I showed you where the Callicarpa are, and that was too dry and too shady. So I'm really glad that I transplanted them out to here where they get full sun and I can keep them watered all summer. And it really shows their performance is just so much better. I don't know if you can hear, but my neighbors are playing pickleball, and first of all, I love that game. I also just love the sound because it makes us sound like we live somewhere fancy. So here's that Seminole pumpkin, the legit Seminole pumpkin that grew from somewhere in the back into the woods, and it's doing so well, and it's so beautiful. And no, this is not powdery mildew. This is what the Seminole pumpkin looks like. It's actually mildew resistant and resistant to the squash vine borer. And it's starting to set fruit. There's a sweet little one there. So I have some high hopes for this. Last year we got 52. I'm hoping we exceed that. And of course, it's also growing over in this border, which is very, very sunny. There we go. And we've got some good fruit coming along here. It's a big, nice one. There's another up here. I know there's more throughout. Back in there, I see some fruit. And I think this all is Seminole pumpkin climbing up. I haven't seen a lot of fruit set in these ones that are climbing up. Now last year, I had, you know, pumpkins dangling like 20 feet out of trees. And this is a pumpkin that definitely likes to climb. It's finally, you guys notice, it's finally going up into the peach without me doing anything. That was my goal. And this border, I am gonna come through and clean out the buckwheat. That is on my list for this week. I'd like to get this bed kind of revamped a bit before the open garden, Saturday, October 9th. The squash are so funny how they just kind of decide that they would rather grow on grass. And this is the Goldilocks from All American Selections. And I've been eating these as these little tiny squash, but I learned that they're actually like an acorn squash, so you can let them grow to maturity and then they're like a long storage. So I'm gonna leave some of these, but you know, I just love eating squash, like immature squash. So I actually prefer it immature to the kind of hard ones that have to get roasted. And this okra, I'm so impressed with, and I really do need to come out and harvest. This is the perfect size. Actually, that maybe, no, that's still good. But like that is too big. I let that go, but that's all right. I need some for seed. Look at that wonker down here. That I purposely didn't harvest that because I wanted to make sure that I had good mature seed. I love this plant. This is a variety from the Utopian Seed Project. And if you're not familiar with them, you should give them a follow on Instagram. Chris Smith is just doing really cool things with all kinds of different plants, but he is definitely the expert on okra. And we're lucky to have him here in North Carolina. And I wanted to show you one of my favorite grains, sorghum. Now this is the broom sorghum. So this is actually like what they used to make brooms out of during like colonial days. You see how tall they are? And the birds will eat the seed. This is not the seed sorghum that you would necessarily cook with, and it's not cane sorghum that you would crush the stems for. There's a lot of different types of sorghum. They're all very practical. They are very heat tolerant. I have some more over here. Very drought tolerant, great plant native to Africa that's been in the United States since the slave days. I think it's really important as a gardener in the South to cultivate crops that are relevant for the real history of this region. And sorghum and rice are two plants that are extremely important in the heritage of the South, and it's recognizing the role that Africans played in the agricultural system. Of course, castor beans. You can see pumpkin coming out through the bottom here. And this border, it's still looking pretty good. It's probably about time for me to come in and start cleaning this up. I'm planning to do this as all barley for the winter season. I'm saying that in this video so that I hold myself accountable and actually do it. The fire ants are really active at this time of year. And I do need to come through and treat them. Someone told me diatomaceous earth works really well. I usually use Amdro. So I'm going to try diatomaceous earth and see. But you can see the animals, probably specifically deer, are definitely coming in now and eating the sweet potato. But that's fine. At this stage, it doesn't do any harm at all. The candy corn kufia is just starting. This is usually in full flower for like Halloween. So it's still a bit early, like a month early. Everything here through here. Getting lots of eggplants now. I think eggplants are just such a pretty, pretty plant. And I love how the leaves shimmer with the morning dew and the sunlight. Everything kind of has a magical cast. And my favorite thing in the whole garden, without question, I'm definitely like, from now on, I will always grow sweet potatoes over an arch. I don't know why it didn't occur to me before this year, but this is 100% how sweet potatoes should be grown. That is the coolest. I hope people will use this during the open garden as like a selfie station. I am so charmed by it. I knew I would love it. I didn't know that I would love it as much as I do. And you know, it was a total accident to have this black-eyed Susan vine, which I planted probably 7 years ago, and it just self-sows. But I really like that combined. And they're both at Pomawea. So, you know, it's funny. They're both related. They're different species, but they're the same genera. And thankfully, I've gotten my big yellow bag, so I can actually start gardening. I have a whole bunch of stuff that I want to sow, and I realized like a week ago, I was like, I can't do anything until I get my soil. I feel completely paralyzed without this. So I'm really happy to have that back in the garden so I can get into action. And overall, I'm pretty pleased. I'm excited to have garden tours starting to come visit this week, and I'm really excited to have the open garden. This will be the opportunity for you to buy poppy seeds. So I've been busy packaging poppy seeds, and I promise you these are very generous portions. This is a 1/4 ounce, and it's more poppies than most people really would have room for. Poppies are best direct seeded in open space, full sun, bare compost once the soil gets cold. And so for here in North Carolina, that is usually between Thanksgiving and Christmas. And I will make a ton of videos showing you exactly how. Don't rush the season. There is very little benefit to putting these out too early. And I will have poppies and various grains and other spring blooming plants like nigella, larkspur, bachelor buttons, carrots, daikon radish, all kinds of really cool seed available during this fall open garden, which is Saturday, October 9th from noon to 4 p.m. I'll also have soil cube available for purchase. These are 1 cubic foot bags. These run $15 a piece, and this is exactly what you should sow your poppy seeds into. So for every package of these, I would recommend 1 bag of this. So these are going to be $5. These are $15. So you can grow poppies just like me for an investment of $20 total. And I don't mail order. I'm sorry, but I don't, okay? So you have to come to the open garden if you want to buy these poppy seeds. It's just how I do it. So I hope that you've enjoyed today's tour. I sincerely hope that you will be able to come visit during the open garden, and I look forward to giving you more updates. I am long overdue for an update on the Carolina Cottage property, which is still in process of renovation. Of course, we have long wait times for getting things like cabinets and floors and all that stuff put in, but we're making lots of progress, and I'm super excited that next year at this time, when we have an open garden, out-of-towners will be able to rent it and actually stay right here on the property, and we'll be able to have gardening classes to teach you exactly how to create a foodscape for yourself. I think hands-on classes are like the future for me. I'm kind of exhausted from this new hybrid model of virtual and live at the same time, and I'm hoping that I can transition to something that really will be able to give people this gardening experience that's very authentic and meaningful, and I'm excited to take all of you along for the ride. So, as always, thanks so much for watching. Have a great week, everybody.